Welcome to EdUp Curriculum. I am your host, Nicole Poff. I know I always say that I'm really excited, but I am. I talked to today's guest a while ago, and I've continued to kind of think about what we talked about initially. And so I'm excited to talk about it today, kind of invite everyone into his world and what him and his university have been up to. So without further ado, today's guest is John Miles. John, thank you so much for being here. Before we begin, what do you want the audience to know about you? Can you share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to talk about this too. Um, I guess we'll start with I'm the provost at Reinhardt University. We're in Waleska, Georgia, about 40 miles north of Atlanta, a small comprehensive university. I came here about 4 years ago. And before that, I taught at Wofford College in Spartanburg, South Carolina. And then before that, I was a high school teacher. So I've been a teacher for 25 years. It's what I love to do, and curriculum is something I got into very early on, and yeah, I think that's good.
Awesome. I love when teachers become like provost because you worked all the way up there, but you have sound pedagogy. And not all provosts are the same, right? Some provosts make their way into the role through other leadership opportunities and things like that. But I always feel like when you were a teacher first, at the core, there's that student and sound pedagogy, and the curriculum is important. And that frames a lot of the work that you do. And so I think that that's a good lens as we move into kind of what we're going to talk about today, which one of them is your kind of curriculum overhaul. So I'm just going to open it up to you to kind of talk about you guys recently you overhauled your curriculum, your gen ed curriculum.
Hmm.
Just tell us a little bit about that and then we'll go from there.
Okay, that sounds good. So I should say this was, the end product was something that took 3 years to get to. So basically, my entire time here, the first 3 years was dedicated to this, and I'm very happy first to say that I can represent the work that the faculty's done here when we start talking about this. Certainly, I was in conversations, but the faculty has done all this work, and I think Reinhardt is sort of at the forefront of some things, and I think it's good for us to talk about. So, uh, one thing that I will say, in before I start launch into the curriculum, is that Reinhardt's history is pretty interesting, and it led to the gen ed we had when I got here. Its way back history was a finishing school in North Georgia, but it became a 2-year college and then became a 4-year college in the 90s, the early 90s. So the gen ed that was created in the early 90s was basically built around what used to be the associate liberal arts degree. So it was a big gen ed. And by the time I got here, it was still 48 hours. So we have a 48-hour general education that not everybody was taking the same courses in. So we took a lot of data to figure out where our students were and what courses they were taking, and decided to decrease the liberal arts core to 30 hours. So that was the first big thing, is to talk about we're getting rid of some of the courses on the periphery that were actually major courses being pushed down into gen ed. We really want students to take some individual pathways in gen ed and things they're interested in. So the requirements are really low too. So the number of hours is low and the requirements are low. So students get really to create their own path in the gen ed. And we wanted more courses to be taught by full-time faculty. So we changed English 101 and 102 to a writing intensive course taught across the disciplines by all faculty who will be trained by our English faculty to teach that course. So we're really trying to put our best faculty in front of our youngest students, and to help them build some of those essential skills of learning how to do college with some of our best faculty. Because oftentimes your best faculty are teaching less and less. And so we wanted them to teach more. The other part of this curriculum that is very exciting is that we were requiring a minor outside of the area of study. So if you take, most institutions have really condensed, the majors are condensed in a couple of places on campus. We found that about 70% of our students who graduate out of 3 areas at our institution. So we're like, okay, so they're getting gen ed, experiences with our full-time faculty across humanities, social sciences, and the sciences. But after that, they're getting all of their classes in their major taught in these three very narrow areas. So it's really a two-part reasoning. One is we think students need, like most people do, most people say, most hiring managers say, they need a major, something they study in depth, and they also need a skill or another thing that they do that helps support them. So writing, critical thinking, those things, not that they're not taking place in these other majors, but that they might be the focus of some of these more liberal arts majors. And also when you have, like an English degree that you're teaching and you have a very low number of English majors, if you have more people minoring in English, those upper division classes have more students in. So it's a better student experience to teach, to be in a class with 8 to 10 than it is to be in a class of 3 to 4. And it's a better fiscal model to teach 8 to 10 than 3 to 4. So it really, I think it really covers a lot of bases on what we are trying to accomplish here, and I think it's I'm excited about what it looks like in the coming year.
Yeah, I'm so excited. There's so many ways to take this because there's so many parts and layers to this, but
Mhm.
you kind of wrapped up with like this covers a lot of bases. And as you were talking, I just kept thinking, wow, the strategy just continues, right? It's like this this like ball of yarn that just keeps unwinding, and like little treasures are coming out. Like when you talked about um, the full-time faculty teaching it,
Mhm.
so smart. I have a colleague, Dr. John Gardner, and he always says we need to teach students, especially in their first year, to
Mhm.
love the university.
Right.
Students don't just come to school knowing that they love their university, right? They're kind of
Right.
scared and timid. It seems like this is a really good strategy to put your full-time faculty who probably do love the university and know a lot about the university,
Mhm.
um, kind of front and center for those first set of courses.
Yeah, no, that's great. And uh, John Gardner, somebody that I've worked with. I've worked with the
I love him.
JNGI Institute, and one of the things that this is the retention strategy too. It is about, we often talk about, um, the first year is we put a lot of effort, an instance in the first year. We have a first year experience. That's taught by full time folks. It's taught by full time faculty and staff. But you're right. I mean, getting people that have been invested in the institution for a long time who have just come on and they're excited about the institution, those are the kinds of people you want your students to be. You want them to enter the university with them, not get to them after a certain amount of time. And we also, I mean, I think it's imperative that, like, those are the people whose disciplines for the most part are only in gen ed, for a lot of these students. So you're opening doors for them and understanding that you may teach history. You may not want to be a history major, but you can take 3 history courses now in gen ed to and that's a vertical curriculum that allows you to get excited, but it also gives you a connection with someone who you may not have if you just came in, have some adjunct labor. Not that adjuncts can't teach well, different kind of associated with the institution, but they understand, the full-time faculty understand the systems of the institution and
Yep.
help build those structures for students. So yeah, that's absolutely part of it. You know,
Yeah, I think it's so smart. I hated my gen eds. I think this is why I'm so fascinated by this conversation,
mm,
is just for the full sake of transparency.
right.
It was struggle city those first 2 years. Like
Yeah.
I just could not wait to get into my major courses. And
Hmm.
my gen eds, I mean, I literally viewed them as a roadblock. I was like, why do I need to take I don't want to take history and I don't
Right.
want to take, these courses.
Right.
Um so I love all that you guys are doing with this, the pathways, like
Hmm.
let's unpack because we use pathways and we know what that means. But
Right.
when you say we let students develop pathways, what does that mean?
Okay. So we have 4 pathways identified, and students are going to take 12 hours in 2 of those pathways. Um, and the topics of those pathways aren't really that important. There are 4 topics, and I wish I could remember them, but I can't remember them right now. But the 4, there are those 4 pathways, and what we are doing as faculty have gone in and looked at those 4 pathways and taken courses that they would already offer, and they've put them all in there. So there's these big list of pathways. So a student may take a history course in the global studies pathway, right?
Mhm.
They may also take a history course in the humanities and technology pathway. So our accrediting body only says you have to have 4 basic requirements. So students have to have that checked off, but that's the only checklist part of this. When you were talking about gen ed, I have been fascinated with gen ed for so long because I've wanted it to not be the thing that students think they have to get out of their way before they
Yep.
get to the important thing,
Yep.
or the thing they love. And I think part of that is just the way we build our students when they come into the institution. They're just trying to get to the thing that they think they love. But I also think that it's part of the way we've presented gen ed. I think what we're doing, and I really believe this, is giving gen ed a structure that students see they're navigating instead of a list of courses that they feel like they're fulfilling.
Yep.
Now, of course, that might not be how they view it, but I think that's how we can advise it. And it does give them a lot more choice than they've ever had. So,
I love it. And I think I'm making assumptions here, but when I took my gen eds, let's say I was taking astronomy, um, I felt like that course was very much designed for someone who was going to major in astronomy and they wanted to see that career path. And
mm-hmm,
I felt already behind. Like day one, I
mm-hmm,
didn't know the language we were using. And so I literally had to kind of suffer through it.
mm-hmm,
Um, when we talked before, we kind of talked about this idea of reducing the prereqs and really
mm-hmm.
making these minors and these courses accessible. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. That's a great question. Well, one of the things that most people did, and this was not something we did intentionally when we were talking about this, but once this was passed, people started thinking about their minors that were basically mini versions of their majors. That's the way they had been built, and there had just been no real. This is not anything against what we're doing. It's just there had been no real. There's not a culture of minoring outside of your area. There's not a culture of double majoring in a lot of things in a lot of places. Um, so thinking about people, we took all the minors out and we sat around and we looked at them and we said, okay, these are like 24-hour minors, and what we tried, giant, right, with 2 prerequisites, and they're all structured to some, and so what you end up doing is you disincentivize students from exploring,
Yep.
right? And so, for example, the English minor, they just got redone. So they removed all the prerequisites except for one. They think that students need to take a literary studies course before they take courses in the upper division. I think that's fine. I think that's something that reduces. They don't have to take all these. They don't have to take 3 surveys. They just have to take 1 course. On the other side, our religion minor, there are no prerequisites. You just have to take 5 religion courses. So,
That's
you
cool.
know, you end up, you might take, you might take a gen ed course in the Hebrew Bible, and then you can take whatever 200 300 level course you want to in the next semester to continue on to get a minor in religion. And sports studies or sports management degree, same thing. I just met with our digital media arts folks last week, and they're trying to figure out how to do this. And what they've done is said, okay, we have a digital photography 1, 2, and 3, right? And now we're just taking the numbers off of them and calling it digital photography production, digital photography editing, digital photography something else, I can't remember. And you could take them in any order. So it's not building on it because there's lots of things you can do with those. So I think it takes it's going to take time for a lot of people to get around to thinking like this because it's different, because everything is not. So it is. the removal of prerequisites, I think, will open up a lot of courses that students would have never had access to. Um, and and we talked about them being accessible, and that's, I think, what you're talking about is that, don't create a minor that says when you walk into this 300 level course that you should have taken that 100 and 200 level course that lead to it, but make it a course that's accessible to students. Doesn't mean you're lowering your standards. It just means you're creating, like, I really like the point you made about language. You're not using all disciplinary language. You're using language of you're using more open and accessible language so students can have an experience in that course and be successful in it. So
I love it. What I love about this too is you're really presenting a way where students can logically explore, right? A lot of people right now, especially right now, there's kind of this fear in higher ed that if we structure the sequencing of the courses too much to
mm-hmm,
try to help get students to stay on track, right?
mm-hmm,
That we are losing that kind of the way that students traditionally have been able to explore in their undergraduate, right? Like you can
mm-hmm.
take multiple things and you can figure out where you want to go. And you guys, it feels like, have found a way to make this very safe for your students to you can explore because maybe you're going to take this minor and you're going to actually fall in love with it. And maybe you're going to want to change your major. And that's fine because it feels like you guys have thought about this entire ecosystem and how it interacts with each other versus just, yep, take some classes and then, you're going to figure out what you're going to do. And then hopefully in 4 years, you're done. This feels like you just have put, I keep going back to the word like safeguards. It feels like you've put safeguards around this process.
Yeah. Well, that's the hope. Maybe we talk in a year and I'll tell you how the reality is. But we did talk a lot about that because we do have some professional programs that you do have to take some courses early on. But the nursing program was one of the first ones that said, you've just freed up 15 hours for our students to explore things that they would never have been able to explore before they get into the nursing school. And they can do it in their first 2 years. They may not have room for it in the third and fourth year, but that's okay because they can explore differently. We have some other places that are, we have some giant majors, just like everyone else. But I do agree with you. I think we the the narrative around the student experience and students entering the institution for a long time has been, you need to get them in their major as quickly as you can, and that is going to provide them with a clear pathway and get them on track and keep them attached. Um, I think that's uh, complete nonsense. I think students may need to be prodded to explore, but once they're put in I like the way you said that, an ecosystem that allows them to ask questions, to think about what they're interested in. I think it gives them some freedom in a way. And I think it allows you as an advisor to say, I'm getting better majors in biology because they're taking more art classes.
Yes.
And you're starting to advising starts to play a role, and you're seeing these overlaps. Now we've done some other things, right? We've said um, you there are some majors that pair really nicely with some minors that lead to career paths. That's the other way that's a little bit more structured, but it is like if you major in biology and you do data science, there are certain careers that are open to you that you wouldn't have known. Same way if you do social media marketing in biology. So we're trying to right now really be intentional about some pairings that wouldn't come to mind, and it allows students, what you're saying, some freedom. They may take those 3 art classes and decide I'm going to double major, because I only have this many left. So yeah, I think it does. It is sort of balancing that. And the when I talk to parents at admissions events for our incoming students and our possible students, and I talk to them about this, most of them are very excited because they say that same thing. My experience was I got here, I got to college, I had to take these courses that led to this thing, and I maybe got to take one class that I really wanted to. And so yeah, so I think it's again, I say in a year, let's see if it's actually playing out this way or 2 years. But that's we're trying to build it for that to occur.
And it feels it. I mean, it's sound logic to me. How about that?
Yeah, I like
Um,
that. Yeah.
yeah, it's very sound. It to me it preserves the undergraduate experience,
Mhm.
the ability to explore, to look into different disciplines while also prevent maybe an 8-year student, right? Like you guys have figured out how can we get to the goal of graduation while also allowing students to explore other disciplines in a way that doesn't just have them wandering the halls, you know, randomly.
Right.
You guys have put it, again, I'm going to go back to safeguards.
Yeah.
Something else when you and I talked is I once had a student in my class and he worked with the men's basketball team.
Hmm.
And he said, one of the most uncomfortable situations or conversations I have constantly is if you're not a professional basketball player, what are you going to do? And he said, this question is very offensive to these young men.
Hmm.
They are like, how dare you ask what I'm going to do if I'm not a professional basketball player? Because I will be a professional basketball player. And he's like, it's a tough world because they're good. And I
Yeah.
want to believe in them and I want to encourage them to dream big and work hard, right? But there's also this reality here.
Hmm.
And I can't, in the back of my mind, this requiring a minor outside of your area feels like I don't want to call it a backup plan,
Yeah.
but it kind of gives that vibes, right? You're giving students a way where if maybe their plan A
Uh huh.
doesn't work out perfectly,
Uh huh.
there's something in the back seat for them that they're good at and that they have some knowledge and skill set in.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And yes, we have a thing here called the Convocation of Artists and Scholars, and it's a 2-day event where our students share their undergraduate research with the campus. Right, so it's we have artists performing, we have posters of research from the biologist, we have presentations from every discipline on campus. And we have a scholars program here that's different than an honors program, but it's called our Diverse Talents and Scholars Program. But they had a poster session yesterday, and they're all second year students, and they're all reflecting on their first 2 years, right? So they're about to enter into their nursing school or the School of Education. And two in particular, I'll point out that I think is exactly what you're talking about, and this is what we hope to have more of, right? Because I think what we're doing, you say guardrails, and I talk about structures a lot. We're structuring for the experience we want students to have, right?
Yep.
Instead of them happening upon it,
Yep.
and so with these students, um, she's a sophomore, she's already had 2 internships in human resources. She wants to be a human resource officer, but she took a photography course in communications, and she's like, I figured out I'm good at photography, so now I don't know what I'm going to do with it. She's like, I may have a little side job when I'm taking pictures. I may, do HR as a consultant and do photography. But you're right. It does. I like that sort of fallback plan too, because it gives you a skill set that will allow you to explore it as a job or as a hobby or as anything else. Because, if you, yeah, I really think that's very important to think about, because you end up with nurses, right? Another student says, I came in here, I wanted to be a biology major. I didn't like it. I started taking these courses, started talking to the nursing program. But the other side of her poster is about creative writing.
Hmm.
She's like, I took a writing class with this person. She said, I think you should take my creative writing class. She's like, I've already taken 3 creative writing classes before I'm going to the nursing school. You know, now I think that's going to make her a better nurse.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's going to be but I think she's also going to want to write and read for the rest of her life. So I think I really like the language that you're talking about, because I do think there's one more thing I'll say about that, because there's some good research about student athletes, especially. I have 2 athletes as children who are in college, and they talked about the first 2 years you're there as an athlete. And there starts to be this transition where you become a student and you become a part of the university. more in the second half of your sophomore year and the beginning of your junior year. So what about if we could start that connection earlier, is what you're talking, like you start the connection to the institution a little earlier. It helps with retention. It helps with their experience as a student outside of their athletic. And I think it gives them an identity as a student athlete, not just as an athlete.
Absolutely. And I think this is probably going to sound really cheesy, but you're giving them such a gift by having them explore something else. Like, I think about your student who wants to do HR but could also do photography.
Mm-hmm.
What a gift to step out as a new grad
Mm-hmm.
and feel like, wow, there's so many options here. I could do photography full time and HR as a consultant. I could do HR part time, and I could, through the holidays, take, pictures for people.
Yeah.
What a gift it is to these students to come out as new graduates and feel like there are opportunities versus I have a degree in accounting, and
Mm-hmm.
so therefore I must be an accountant. Oh, and by the way, there are 10 accounting degree uh, 10 accounting jobs currently open in my town, and wow, I feel pressure, right? Like,
Right.
you you guys are giving them a gift. That's probably really cheesy, but
Well, I think, I don't think it's cheesy. I think it's a thing that I think I wish I could have bottled up some of those experiences I had yesterday with those students telling me about these, and been able to say, you know, this is the work we actually do. And I think putting your best people in front of students is a gift to them, and they get excited about it. I mean, that the young woman with the photography, she's like, I'll be able to take prom pictures for people that I mentor. I'll be able to take family pictures. I mean, that's a lot. We talk about doing the real work for the good life.
yeah,
Is one of our is our sort of core statement. And our president Mark Roberts talks a lot about the good life is the thing that you get to give back. And you get to do things. You get to do things in your community. You get to be a better citizen, and it's not just a job. You're not just doing that. And I really do. I really do think that I like that. I'm going to adopt that gift language, because I do think, and I tell my nursing dean, I talk to the nurses all the time. I want my nurses to really know nursing.
yeah,
You know, we have 100% NCLEX pass rate. Our last four cohorts, they know nursing. I think it'd also be cool if they knew art, or they knew chorus, or they knew, um, you know, if they took a business course,
yeah.
a couple of business courses. So I do think, and I want my accountants to know accounting, but I do think the rush to that sort of the rush to be an expert in something and to be very narrowly focused is a highly problematic world for us to be in as educators.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I have two thoughts here.
Okay.
One of them is A, how often do people actually stay in their major, right? Like, my major was child development. I worked with kids for maybe 6 months and realized that's not for me. And so then I felt like I was back to the drawing board.
Yeah.
But the second point here, and this is where I want to take this conversation, is for your faculty, you guys started this process 3 years ago, right?
Huh?
To sit in those, and I hope your faculty was in the room yesterday hearing, the presentations,
Mhm.
because to me that would be so inspiring to see it kind of come full circle, right? And that would motivate me as a faculty member to be even better, right? So it's going both ways. It's trickling down to the students, but it's also pushing right back up to the faculty, and you just have this continuous round and round, good
Yeah.
feelings, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I think I think it's broadening what they really want to do. Right? They really want to have connection with students, and they do a very good job of establishing a relationship with them, and getting them excited about what their field in their field. But they also are, we are we have 30% of our students are Pell, 36% are first gen. So yesterday we had a guy read the first 5 pages of his novel, and He's a master storyteller. If you talk to our director of our MFA, who teaches undergraduate writing, creative writing, he doesn't have a great command of the language, but he has a gift,
Hmm.
to use that language. Like, that kid can tell a story better than anybody else in the room. He would not have had, he doesn't have access to creative writing courses at a lot of universities. He doesn't have the space for it. He doesn't have advisors telling him, you need to go take this because it will change the way you see the world. And that's what's happening. I mean, that's what happens when they take these classes and they do these things that they're like, whoa, wait a minute. I had no idea that, that taking pictures was fun.
Yeah.
And it is the faculty who teach those courses are going to get those students back in more. It's not just going to be a one-off. And they're going to be able to build that relationship and those abilities of those students through 5 or 6 courses instead of just teaching them in one gen ed course.
Yeah. This is, man, what a special, I feel like you guys have really created this really special little place.
Mhm.
A lot of I'm part of some Facebook groups where faculty talk amongst themselves, and there's a lot of kind of, I'm going to say hostility right now. That might not be a great word to use, but
Mhm.
there's a lot of faculty who are feeling like the student has changed. They're
Mhm.
late to class. I don't know what to do. They're using AI all the time, right? There's a lot of
Mhm.
resentment. There's a lot of faculty who right now are saying, I don't want to do this anymore. This is not what it looked like 20 years ago.
Mhm.
How has that looked like? What does that look like for you guys? Are you feeling that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We have the same problems as everybody else. Because or we'd be Disney World, which would be kind of cool.
No,
But
yeah.
no, I mean, I think that is that's a really good point, and I would say that the majority of our faculty are dealing with those problems in a positive way, and they're trying to understand it. Like, we just finished reading as a group, Co-Intelligence, the book about AI, because I mean, it is uh, it is pervasive and it is a problem. We are restructuring our student support, our tutoring center, to be a more supplemental instruction center. And that supplemental instruction is being built by our faculty. So we're trying to say, yes, maybe students have changed. I don't, they have. I have a 17-year-old who's going to go to college. He's very different than my student who's about to graduate college. Just the gap
Yep.
it's changed. But I feel like these conversations there's been productive tension around them. And there's been a lot of back and forth about what we're going to do about AI, how we're doing that. But I ultimately, I think that our faculty, they have those conversations, but the majority of them, almost all of them, get in a classroom with students and they're interested in student learning. They're interested in supporting those students, and they spend time with them. They spend time with them outside of the classroom. And ultimately, whether or not a student chooses to use AI is going to be a choice that you're going to have to work with your students on. We're going to have to develop policies around. You're going to have to change your pedagogy to embrace it or bracket it in a very specific kind of way. But ultimately, if you develop a trusting relationship with your students and you develop a course that they're interested in, you're going to have less likely. It's not just AI. They're going to be less likely to be late to class, less likely to not come to class, less likely to not buy your book. We have all of those same problems. But what I have consistently said is, and I'm going to sort of repeat a little bit of what I've already said, but what I've consistently said is, this goes back to my time working with John Gardner and Drew Koch and thinking through the student experience. Our best students have this experience already. They're making they're integrating the knowledge. They make the connections. They are having different experiences, and they're bringing that together. The majority of our students need a structure for that experience. They don't have the scaffolding to understand that, and we need to build a curriculum that meets those needs and makes that experience accessible for everybody. Now, everybody's not going to embrace it, and everybody's not going to be able to be successful in it. But if you're not structuring for that kind of experience, you're not meeting the needs of your students. and you're not meeting them where they are. And I think we firmly believe that that's the work we do here.
It sounds like it. I was a first gen student. I actually didn't know that I was a first gen student until I was in my doctorate program,
Oh,
and like went through my entire undergraduate and master's program hearing
yeah.
first gen,
Uh-huh.
but I never even knew that that was me. I did not know I was a first gen student.
Right.
Um, but I very much lived in that world of I'm working. I'm an 18-year-old. I'm working full time. I'm trying to schedule a traditional class schedule around my 40 hours a week. I'm trying to figure out financial aid, and my parents
Mm-hmm.
don't know anything about it, right? Like I lived in that world and it was exhausting. I think if I wasn't, I have like an achiever type mindset.
Right.
If it wasn't for that, I don't know that I would have survived my first term, honestly.
Yeah. No, I mean, yes. I mean, and it was cheaper. And it was, I think you're exactly right. I think the key is, um, you, you were not, you were able to navigate it.
Yep.
And you are successful, right? Um, the majority of people without guidance and help, and mentorship don't make it. I mean,
Absolutely.
less than 50% of the people that start higher ed in our country finish it. And it is our duty, to sort of help and support them in ways that, we've done a lot of work on the student success side, and that the people who do that work were involved in these curricular decisions, and along the way they were saying, is this going to be confusing? How are we going to train advisors to make sure that students understand it who haven't been there? And those conversations around how they navigate the entire institution, from financial aid to the registrar's office to the business office, like those are conversations we're trying to have, but they're hard.
Yep.
And there are a variety of different students coming here with a variety of different experiences, and we just have to figure out how to try to support them in all of those aspects. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah. And I
yeah.
think those, like you said, those silos really work against us, not for us.
Right.
And I think some of our policies, again, this John Gardner, I'm going to have to tell him A, that he needs to come on the podcast, and B, that he has to listen to this episode because we've talked about him a lot. But one of the first times I heard him talk, he was talking about like conducting a policy audit, right?
Mm,
What are your policies saying? Are they for your students or are they against your students? And
mm,
I was talking with the school the other day, and they said, once a student gets on academic probation, they have one term to turn it around.
uh-huh.
And I'm like, they didn't try to get on academic probation.
Right.
And now you're expecting in one term that they're going to be able to figure out what they did wrong for the
Uh,
first year and
uh-huh.
fix that while balancing their course. Like, this is an unrealistic expectation. And this policy is literally just pointing them to the door. Like, you might as well, the second you give them that academic probation letter, you might as well just kick them out in that moment, because
Right.
no person tries to end up on academic probation. It
Right.
just happens, right?
Right. Right. No, I think you're exactly right. We talk about, I'm informed by a lot of the same things you're talking about, because we talk a lot about policies as barriers, and the real tension, that the academic probation policy has always been sort of baffling to me, right? Um, I almost lost my scholarship as an undergrad, and I didn't even get a letter. It was just like, if you don't make but here, we're trying to do the right thing by telling a student, you have to do this, um, and you're not giving them an answer. If you're not giving them support to help them understand, A, why they're on here, B, what are the underlying reasons that caused it, and then what can you do to change it? The policy is just a barrier. We talk about holds a lot at the
Mm,
institution, registration holds, you know, very good intentions.
yep.
You want people to pay their bills. You want people to pay their fines. You want people to do their community service. Um, but as you're looking at those things, I think you're exactly right. You need to think about, um, if a student says, okay, I'm not going to do my 30 hours, I'm going to go somewhere else. Is that what you want for your institution? Do you want your students to leave? And how can you give them the experience that says, maybe I need to do this, I want to be here, without limiting their ability to um, to register? I think I think academic integrity issues
Mm.
are often short-sighted, and I think we're all going to have to rethink those in the next. If we're not already thinking them, we need to go ahead and rethink them. And be less punitive and more around the concept of growth and education, which is what the business we're in.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Like less APA formatting docking, right? Like let's stop docking so many points for APA format
Mm-hmm.
and let's start spending time on like really great feedback.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that is kind of goes back to the punitive,
Mm-hmm.
like stop punishing them for missing a period over and over and over again, and
Right.
instead really start talking about the skills that they're missing or that they do have. I think that there's value in giving positive feedback of saying,
Mm-hmm.
hey, you wrote this really well, and this is going to be a very powerful tool
Mm-hmm.
when you're in your career. Students don't know that, right? They
Mm-hmm.
just
Mm-hmm.
go through.
Right.
But if we're so focused on punishing, I
Mm-hmm.
think we lose the opportunity to reinforce what they're already doing really well.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good point, and I think that we were talking about we were having a conversation with deans earlier today about high impact practices, and we were talking about e-portfolios and portfolios. And I'm the person that I was an English professor for a long time, and what I always said all the time, and still do now, the process is more important than the product.
Hmm.
And when you're thinking about whether it's a paper or a portfolio, the way you're thinking about doing it and how you learn how to think through that process is vastly more important than producing an error-free paragraph. And eventually, if you stick with it and you understand that you care enough about it that you're going to take the time to edit it, you're going to know how to do that because you've been through the process. Is very it's very important. Those ways of thinking don't come from red X's and leaving, or you can't register, or any barrier you're putting up to those are barriers to learning and growth. So you need to figure out how to bring people into a conversation around what they're doing. And I agree completely with you. Positive feedback and recognizing what they do well. They may not write that, they may not produce error-free prose, but they may be the best storyteller you have in the room. And that's what you need to embrace and applaud.
Absolutely. When we first talked, you had said, and I wrote it down, changes in the DNA, like of Reinhardt.
Yeah.
I also think like caring is in your guys' DNA. So many of these initiatives and strategies and just practices are so kind and really demonstrate just a genuine like caringness about the student, which I think we sometimes lose when
Yeah.
we're so wrapped up in policies and trying to be the first one to the AI,
Mm-hmm.
scene of this is how we're handling AI. I
Mm-hmm.
actually think it's really refreshing that when you and I talked, AI was not front and center. Like you
Mm-hmm.
guys were like, we're going to redo our curriculum and how we teach it and how students can interact with it. You weren't talking about fancy AI tools.
Right.
Um, yeah, I think caring for the student is very much in your guys' DNA. And I have felt, and I hope others who are listening to it feel the same way. I have felt very inspired by just how positive um, all of these changes are.
Right. Well, I appreciate that, and I will say there are the negative things, and we are doing. We are on the we have AI in our curriculum. We're doing all kinds of things like that. But I do think our mission, you know, is to educate the whole person with challenge and care, and
Mm.
we talk a lot about that, right? Because we really want to challenge students, and that's that's how you learn in those rough spots. But you have to support them and you have to care for them, because if you don't, they don't want to struggle with you.
Yep.
And I really do think that our faculty care deeply about their students, and I see it all the time, in all those aspects. But we have a president that says that in front of every group that he speaks to. And when we were working on changing those core statements of the institution, that was one we really thought hard about, because it is, when you're working at an institution that is an access institution, and you need to be able to care and uplift students, and it is in our DNA. It is. We do things. We have students graduate here that would not have been able to do it anywhere else. I don't think. I think we do a lot of good.
That's awesome. And I didn't know your mission. When I feel like this was like some validation for you. Maybe more so for me, but I didn't know your mission until you just told me. But
Yep.
how cool that
Yep.
you sat here and talked about your guys' approach, your strategy, the way that you're doing things. And the word that came to my mind was caring for the student.
Yeah.
I guess that's more than one word, but that's in your mission. I mean,
Yeah.
how validating that you're actually living out your mission.
Yeah. No, that's great. That I
I
mean,
did. Yeah, I didn't know
our
that.
president, if he listens to this, will be very happy. But no, but I do. But I do. I really. Those things came out of discussions with the people. I mean, that the recognition that our faculty do that work is really important, and it's not easy work. It's not easy work, and I have professors, in tears about losing students, but it is the work that we do. I don't know, and I'm not even being. I'm not trying to be flippant about it. Like, it is, we talk a lot about it, and we spend a lot of our resources on student support, and that's the care part. You know,
Yep,
yeah.
totally. I always say that working in higher ed is like a blessing and a curse, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like a blessing because we get to see these rewards every day, but the curse part feels like we have the weight of the world on our shoulders. We have all these students that we care for and we want to see them succeed. And that can feel really heavy when you're trying to figure out, do we move left or right?
Mm-hmm.
How is this going to impact our students? Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's hard. So I always say in higher ed, we really have kind of both worlds that we live in, this really, 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 really hard world. But on the other side of that, it's so rewarding. It's
Yeah.
like, pomp and circumstance. I cry every time. I
Yeah.
I cannot not cry when I hear pomp and circumstance.
Yeah. I'm telling you, I'm a sucker for a ceremony, and
Yeah.
we're entering that time in the academic year where, we have our honor night of honors, where I get to say all these names of these students who have done all these great things. And then I get to say every name of student that walks across the stage at commencement. And that is an honor and a privilege. And it is the excitement of everyone in those moments, as you see that all this stuff that we do that's really hard and really grinding in an environment that is hard and it's not resource rich, is worth it, because that when those students, when they finish, their lives are changed.
Absolutely. Yeah. What a reason to get out of bed that you get to read the names at graduation.
It's
That's
amazing. I can't believe I get to do it. It's so cool.
yeah. And you're right, an honor and a privilege. I mean, that's the best job. That's
Yeah.
you actually see the like fruit of your labor as you read these names.
Yes. Yeah, it makes
Wow.
up for all of the things I have to deal with.
All the ick.
All the things that are not fun, and not a privilege. But yeah, it's great.
Awesome. Well, we're going to end it there because I feel like that was a really good way to end.
Okay, perfect.
Um, John, thank you so much for being here, for sharing more about the work that you guys are doing, the heart of the institution, just your caring
Yeah.
initiatives. I feel very inspired
Oh,
by the work. I just think you guys are creating a really special place, and your students are are really lucky. And I also think your faculty are really lucky to work for a university that respects and honors them. I mean, even how you started this off by saying, I'm going to say that our faculty did a lot of this.
Yeah.
Um, just giving them kudos where kudos are deserved. Again, huge fan.
Oh,
Huge fan
well,
of you
thank you
guys.
so much. This was great.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, had a good
Let's
time.
do it again in a year and
Yeah, let's see. There you go.
let's hear how this overhaul went and if
This
you guys are
that
still
sounds
doing
great.
it.
That sounds
Awesome.
great. Well,
Well,
thank you so
yeah,
much.
thanks so much, John.